England of huge interest, not least around the number 10 situation. So last week, a fallow week, and it was a 3-day training week for England. And the big news was that George Ford was called in from the cold, and Marcus Smith was turfed out and reduced to playing for Harlequins. So we thought, well, that's that. Not least because Smith hasn't lit it up, and Ford has been mentioned by numerous people as being likely to come back into the fold. Smith was man of the match for Harlequins against Exeter. Ford, by all accounts, did train very well, and so it came as something of a surprise that the switch happened. So Smith is back in, Ford goes back to Sale, and you just mentioned before the ad break, Rory, the word seems to be Smith is not just back into the squad, but in at number 10. Yeah,
well, the word went round in the well-informed members of the English press on Friday that there was kind of, or maybe it was earlier than that if Smith played well against for Harlequins at the weekend, that he would be in the team. That it wasn't that he was being axed. He was being sent off to get 80 minutes under his belt, or a good chunk of minutes under his belt, to have him ready to play, because he only played 2 minutes against Wales, I think, and that was. It was quite surprising, but the people who are reporting it are the ones that I would go to know for what's going on in English rugby. And then the same people are reporting today that he's going to start. So, it's a massive call from Borthwick. He's dropping his captain potentially. If he follows through with it tomorrow, Farrell sets the tone in terms of England's preparation and in terms of their messaging. He's a commanding figure, much like his father is within the group. And for him to be put on the bench is just a huge statement from Steve Borthwick, and he kind of needs to make a decision now which one of them he's going to go with, because the World Cup, he's only got one more competitive game after this before the World Cup, and I know the Six Nations is its own thing, but Borthwick's in such a narrow runway to it. He that's the thing with England and Wales, are just scratching around looking for ideas, and it's so tight for them, whereas Scotland, Ireland, France are so far down the road and knowing about what they have. It's really fascinating. But yeah, no, that's the word that's coming out, and it's a big surprise to me. I don't understand why you would release him if he's going to be playing. Surely 3 days of England training, preparing for this France team specifically, will be certainly that's what every other team does. It's what Eddie Jones would have done. It's what Lancaster would have done. If you were released the previous weekend, you just weren't involved, and it's a bit the same. Ireland kept 26 players in last week, and you can kind of get a sense of who the team is going to be from that, who was released and who wasn't.
Yeah,
it's very different, but then. Doesn't say the different isn't good, that he wouldn't have been kind of relieved and given a bit of a release by going and playing with Harlequins at Twickenham in front of a big crowd and winning, and being back in the kind of the comfort of playing alongside Danny Kerr in that team that he seems to thrive so much in. So it's a different approach, but it's interesting. It's very courageous by Borthwick as well.
Very different approach, Fiona. I mean, Eddie Jones would crave every minute possible he could get with his frontline players in training. He would bemoan what Irish coaches had by comparison, the amount of time Irish players would have together. So this is your number 10, and who didn't start the last game, who you're thinking of starting in the next game, that you're saying, well, you stay out of these 3 days training. And this is an English side who are trying to build something in attack. It's not like they know Borthwick's methods inside out. So very unconventional from the outside.
Yeah, it is strange that obviously that he was released, but Rory, obviously no more. Would that mean that Farrell definitely wouldn't be playing 12 in the game, or is there a potential of that? Or
the reports that I've read are that it'll be Ollie Lawrence and Marchant outside him, and that Farrell will be on the bench. But obviously there's scope for them to be wrong, and it's still early in the week. Things do change in training sessions. There's training tomorrow before the team is named, and you just don't necessarily know. It's always a bit worrying when you go with the team. So it's but that seems to be the word.
Yeah, and look, I'm a huge fan of Marcus Smith. I always have been. I thought, it was very harsh for him to be let go in the first place, having not played a lot of rugby with England. So maybe, Joe, you could be looking at something in that Welsh game as well, that Farrell maybe was asked to try a couple of things and he mightn't have done that. So maybe Borthwick is looking at it, okay, I want to get fresh people in there. You've a World Cup to look at. Obviously, it's a huge game, the Six Nations, and they do want to win every game. But France at home against a physical pack would be perfect for Marcus Smith to get in there and get a bit of creativity going as well.
I guess there's a sense with Borthwick, how much creativity is he looking for has been a question. Your read on this would be he doesn't know what his best 10 is at the moment, Rory.
I mean, that would be the the suggestion when he's chopping and changing mid Six Nations, and he's bringing George Ford back, and he's obviously worked closely with Ford at Leicester, and there's a trust there. Ford's only just back from injury. I think a lot of the English
so different in style to Smith. This is the thing.
Yeah.
Like you're
well, Ford can play it both ways. I mean, Ford is a creative force, and like Farrell is creative in his own way as well within a system.
Yeah.
Smith is very different, and it's. I mean, Eddie Jones tried to. What did he say? He wanted to be. Eddie Jones said so many things, made so many commitments to how he wanted his team to play. But he wanted to basically revolutionise how rugby teams attacked, and Smith was the fulcrum of that. And we never got to see whether it was ever going to get there. I don't know, but we never got to see what his picture was.
It sounded very exciting.
It was. He said they were going to be the greatest team in history before that. So I mean, he kind of kept changing his message, but Smith obviously has incredible potential, and he's an incredibly exciting player. At club level, he's phenomenal, and I think there's a school of thought out there, particularly amongst the players who've played at Test level, that he's not a Test calibre 10, and your Test calibre 10 must be a very serious player. And Finn Russell would fly in the face of that a little bit, although Finn Russell can do a lot of the kind of the technical stuff very, very well. Obviously takes risks that others don't. Sexton being the archetypal, can do everything, and is a brilliant defender as well. Smith is fascinating because he breaks that mould to such a degree, and he'd probably be closer aligned to say Richie Mwanga over in New Zealand or something like that. He plays the game in a much more, it seems like, off the cuff way. He brings pace, he challenges the line. Maybe Joey Carberry would be the closest Irish example, I'm not sure. I think if you're going to go with him, you just got to go with him. You can't pick him this week and then bring Farrell in next week. What's the value there? You've just sacrificed 80 minutes that you could have got into Owen Farrell, and you've possibly knocked his goal. Maybe you're challenging him. Maybe it's just that his goal kicking hasn't been good enough. He's only at 42% for this window, and maybe he just goes, well, and maybe training last week, he's still got the yips, and whatever work he's doing with Johnny Wilkinson isn't working, and he's going, look, I can't have a goal kicker who's going to miss against France. I need to kick my goal. So maybe it's as simple as that, but it's like he's up tomorrow. Borthwick, he'll explain his decision, although he doesn't give an awful lot away in his media dealings. But it's almost like they're stuck in the kind of Ollie Campbell, Tony Ward dilemma of Ireland of the 70s, or even the O'Gara Sexton thing. And you can see the value in having it, just to define having. I know everyone's stressed here about what happens if Sexton's not there, but there's great comfort in having him.
Oh yeah,
and it's great comfort in Scotland that Finn Russell is their 10, and even France. I know Jalibert's picked up an injury this week, but a lot of people in France want Jalibert to play, but Galtier's just like, no, Ntamack, I'm always going to pick Ntamack. Garbisi at Italy, there's great comfort in having a 10. And even New Zealand have chopped between Bowden Barrett and Mwanga, and it's really cost them, I think, over the years, because they don't really know where they are with either of them, because they're both different players.
And it's the fulcrum of your attack or your team in so many ways. There you go. That was a taster of Rory O'Connor and Fiona Hayes on Wednesday Night Rugby. The full conversation waiting for you on podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. It's waiting for you there. You can also download the app OTB Sports in your app store.